Today. Today we're going to be talking about App Innovate, which is a solution assessment that we offer here at Tallan. Tallan, we are a full-service consulting firm that works very closely as a Microsoft Gold partner, delivering solutions for Microsoft and helping customers on their journey to the cloud. One of the ways in which we engage is through programs and offerings that are co-funded by Microsoft as what they call their solution assessments, and those offerings help customers to, in varying different places in their journey, to help move to the cloud, and provide a bit of an assessment about where they currently are, and then a plan and a roadmap for how to get to the cloud and really help them on their journey. We're joined today by Derek Cheshire, who is a senior solution assessment specialist over at Microsoft. So I'm going to let him just speak a little bit to the program, and then I'll jump into specifically how Tallan delivers the assessment.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ben. Hi, everyone. Derek Cheshire here. It's been mentioned, I'm at Microsoft on the solution assessment team, and just back up for a half a second. The solution assessment program is really designed to help customers and organizations across the country kind of, build the map from here to there and figure out how to get from here to there. And, we're really lucky to work with partners like Tallan on these offerings. There are 8 of these now, kind of to help customers target different needs. The application innovation assessment specifically is really like laser focused on helping organizations like build a real plan for how they get their most important organization or applications rather, from kind of where they are to where they want to have them. So, there's a lot of really critical apps in everyone's environment. And we obviously have strategies for what we want to do with them, but really getting down to figuring out how to get there and what's the smartest way to get there and make sure they're supportable and secure and optimized is what the App Innovation assessment helps do. So I'm really happy that Tallan is providing this and helping organizations navigate this, and we're really happy to have them in the program. Ben?
Thanks, Derek. All right, so before I jump in, I do like to just share this slide. I think it's a bit of an oldie but a goodie in my mind because it allows us to really quickly understand kind of where people are out and some of the benefits that they're trying to achieve. So typical software on premises is really, there's a big lift in terms of your organization to manage that, run that, keep it, secured and safe from any sort of, outages or kind of intrusions from people that aren't supposed to be using your software. As people, started to realize the burden of of taking that on, infrastructure as a service and some of the cloud providers really jumped in to help, really increase the performance, but also manage the overall, infrastructure and the underlying pieces that really keep the software and the infrastructure operating on a day-to-day basis. The next step up from there is more of the platform as a services and platform as a service, and the platform as a service is really the sweet spot where the application innovation comes into play. So platform as a service, as you can see, is really allows you just to focus on the application and the data, all of the, not only the servers and the infrastructure, but also all the middleware and the operating system and hardware updates and everything are all managed by the cloud provider. On the far end is the software as a service, and that's where we start outsourcing and just purchasing software to run. But anytime you have applications within your environment, the move to the cloud is really centered around the on-premise versus infrastructure as a service versus platform as a service. We work with a lot of customers to move and do what we call a lift and shift, which is moving onto the infrastructure as a service. But my role specifically in the App Innovate program that we're discussing today really focuses on that platform as a service. How do we actually take the applications and not just move them to a different hosting provider, but really transform them and modernize them into something that is going to be native to the cloud and something that can allow you to start dipping your toes in other cloud features and start modernizing and using more advanced Azure services and cloud services that are available on the cloud. So happy again to talk about other areas of cloud modernization, but I did want to use this slide as a kind of to set the stage that, we're really looking at taking applications to that platform as a services side and what would be needed to do such a thing. At Tallan, we approach all of our projects in a very similar way. We really have a kind of a comprehensive program where we start off really understanding what you're trying to do, what your vision is, and then working with you to create a roadmap on how we can achieve that vision. What are the things you need and what are the steps that need to be taken to achieve that? From there, if it's required, we'll do a bit of a proof of concept. It helps get you a little more comfort level, get you a little more understanding of what the process is going to be like and what you would need to do. From there, we start to build out the foundation, get the initial pieces set up as part of an MVP, and then go into that full migration process. And any innovation, if we're starting to leverage new services and bring in different features and functionality of the cloud, we'll bring those all in. And with all of our projects, we always end with operationalizing and making something that is able to be governed and be able to be maintained by you in a long-term basis. And that's where we really focus on security and making sure we focus on security throughout, but that right there, we really kind of turn all the knobs down and make sure everything's as tight as possible. In order to really kick off this process from the App Innovate and from that app modernization perspective, we really look at this funding program from Microsoft. So this funding program that we're talking about today is the Application Innovation. It focuses on looking at your specific applications, the ones that you think would be most likely candidates to move over into a platform as a services environment, and coming up with the as is and to be architecture, which I'll discuss later on. After that, we do have other programs, and there is additional funding available that we can discuss if you work with Tallan, and one of our BDMs can certainly help you figure out and navigate the funding that may be available. But if you're not ready to just go full into a modernization effort and you wanted to start trying it out, the App in 30 might be a good opportunity for you to, leverage and extend upon the App Innovate into actually building something out that you can get your hands on. For the App Innovate, we focus on kind of three main phases. The three phases are kind of broken out into 1 to 2 week increments. Our first phase is more around planning. So we're going to work through a couple of different discussions with you to figure out what your goals are and what your plan is. We'll also look over any documents that you have with your application, any requirements or diagrams that you already have to help us get an understanding of what the application is doing and what's happening. We'll also really, with that, if we have additional applications and you have a larger portfolio, there is other programs that we have that can look at the full portfolio, and we have scanning tools that can help scan the different virtual machines you have to analyze the entire portfolio. But in this case, in that first planning phase, we're really going to identify that 1 to 5 applications that are ideal candidates to move to a modernization perspective. From there, we also, during that analysis and planning phase, we also run a tool that we use called Cloud Pilot. It's a static code analysis tool, and it lets us look at how ready the application is. I have some screenshots later that can show off what that tool is, but it really tells us from a code perspective if there are things in there, or if there's pieces of the framework that you're using that might not be available in the cloud. It gives us an understanding of everything that might be going on with the application. That really kind of helps us determine, any cost to do the modernization and the migration efforts there. After that, on our phase 2, we look at more of the to-be architecture design requirements and what, starting off that with some discussions with you about, if you were just to take this application and move it to an app service, are you looking at more of a containerized approach? Is there anything in the code that you really want to modify or leverage and take advantage of when it moves to the cloud? Some of those examples may be, quick scale up and scale down. If you have anything in your application is a long-running process that you'd like to be able to take and move it into a queue-based operation so it's more asynchronous and can process something in the background using the cloud services that are available on demand, that's something that we talk about as part of our to-be architecture. In addition, we also focus on establishing a roadmap for that effort and overall what it would take to get your pilot modernized and figure out what the shape of that would look like if you're looking for more of a POC. If you're looking to go full modernization with it, we would also discuss that in this phase as well. And then the last thing is really talking about the Azure subscription itself as part of the modernization. What's that going to cost? What's it going to look like? How are you going to structure it and secure it and govern it? After that, we go into our third phase, which is our modernization plan and the review with you. So we'll share our deliverables, make sure you guys are all on board with that, make any changes and adjustments that need to be made. We can have an executive presentation that's delivered to you, and you are able to invite whoever you want from your organization to help see the results of our progress and the results of our modernization planning. And then of those applications that we identified as part of our candidate applications, we score them for a number of different dispositions. Whether the application is needs to be retired or has a mechanism that we can modernize it, or whether it has to be rebuilt and written from new or rebuilt. The last phase, which is kind of the post-engagement. So after the engagement's completed, certainly we can move into a full modernization of your application. We can get your application into production, help you to shut down any on-premises applications that you have that are running for that. But we can also use different proofs of concepts and modernization efforts. That was what we were talking about with the App in 30 engagement. So that engagement will allow us to look at a concept of it, or take some pieces of it and get them migrated so that you're able to see what those pieces start to look like. And then any post-engagement support. We have a lot of customers that go through the App Innovate, and then once they get the proof of concept out, they want to do testing on it. They want to do performance of it. Specifically, when we're talking about any sort of hybrid architectures that we might propose, they want to test out the performance of the hybrid architecture, see how their VPN is functioning and handling the load. So those are all things that we can do after we've finished with the App Innovate, that we were happy to discuss as part of the last phase and going into the future there. In terms of deliverables, really focus on two big areas. So, we call it vision and roadmap. What's also kind of very similar to as-is architecture and to-be architecture. So on the as-is side, we're looking at an executive summary that really tells you, what the purpose of the engagement was, what we were trying to do, any information we have about the as-is architecture to set the stage. The cloud adoption framework gap analysis just allows us to really understand, what your goals are, where your maturity is as an organization, and how you plan on getting there from a long-term perspective. And then any Azure cost estimates for moving to the cloud are included as part of that. On the roadmap side, we look at that to-be architecture. So we take the architecture that you have. If we need to recreate it, that's fine as well. And then we create a brand new version of the architecture that's all cloud-based. Within that, we'll include any sort of Microsoft licensing, any sort of Azure costs that would need to be incurred as part of that. And then finally, we talk about any migration or modernization effort that might be involved in that. So that's really the two costs that can come out of this. The one being the Azure costs, and that's either Azure costs for the proof of concept environment that we'd stand up, or for the actual production environment we stand up. But then also hours, estimates, and effort in order to actually perform any code changes that would need to be made to the actual application to get that moved up and ready for the cloud. So this here is an example of the Azure cost estimates. This is something that's provided as part of the tools that we mentioned from our Cloud Pilot, the part of the tool we use called Cloud Pilot. There's a number of different ways in which the pricing can go. If you're just more of a pay-as-you-go, we can certainly provide that pricing. We have better options if you're on the pay-as-you-go plan. We also have anyone who's using an enterprise agreement, we can help navigate that and what that would look like. And then finally, Tallan itself is a cloud service provider, so we can get better pricing than the pay-as-you-go model, and really kind of help offset some of that cost. The other piece is the Cloud Pilot assessment results themselves. And what you can see here in the very middle is these readiness scores. So these green and red charts represent how ready the application is to move to the cloud. So this gives you a score for these different applications that we ran the assessment on. Again, it's a static code analysis. So you give us access to the code, or we have you run it on the code. It'll produce an output that lets us know what type of remediation effort needs to be done and how ready it is from those percentage perspectives. The reason there's 3 columns here is because you not only have the app services, which is our platform as a service offering that we'd be looking to modernize into, but there is also container readiness as well as virtual machine readiness, which are other destinations that you could look at as part of your application modernization. But again, typically we're looking at app service readiness as our primary target to take the most advantage of the cloud, what the cloud has to offer. All right, moving on. I wanted to just take a moment to talk a little bit about some clients that we've worked with recently, and kind of taking them through their cloud journey. The first one is the Department of Health and in Connecticut. In the Connecticut Department of Health, we focused on taking an old paper-based form for data to care surveillance around HIV patients. Lab work was coming in a paper format, and that paper format was having to get processed. There was a huge time delay in the notification process out to patients. So if a patient got lab results done and they were, they've left the hospital, they're no longer there, and happened to have an HIV positive diagnosis, there could have been a month's worth of delayed time in order to get that notification back to the user because a lot of the stalled paperwork that happens as part of the lab processing. So we were able to work with them to automate a lot of the lab processing and take the applications that they had that were currently taking the manual paperwork in and processing it through different levels of consolidation, as well as kind of notification to the different teams, and fully provide a modernized solution for them that is all cloud and all automation based to help really streamline their activity down from a matter of weeks to a matter of days. In addition, we do a lot of work with a number of different legislative groups. The one here is the Massachusetts Legislature. We've worked with them. We've been a very long partner with them, focusing on a number of different application modernization efforts. The big ones are around their bill management, processing documents, making sure that the bills have a mechanism to go through changes and amendments as part of the bill drafting process. We have agenda management, so as those bills get drafted and manipulated and amendments get made and get proposed, they have to go onto the agenda at the State House for the representatives to vote on. The managing of the agenda, what's on the docket, who's attending, and everything is all part of the a modernization effort that we did to help kind of bring those to the cloud and bring them online. And then finally, from there, we have a public site properties that all of these organizations have, and making them more powerful, more integrated with those agenda management systems and those bill drafting systems, so that constituents within their regions can have real nice, easy access to the number of what's going on in their city or in their town or in their state. The last one here is Amerisher. Amerisher has a number of custom applications that they manage in-house. We worked on an app modernization with them, and we did a proof of concept as well. With them, they had a number of applications that were all using a back-end Oracle database. They wanted to have a bit of a hybrid approach, so we kind of came up with a phase migration for them, where initially they're going after a bit of a hybrid approach, connecting back to the Oracle back-end data warehouse for some of that long-term processing. One of the big concerns that we always have when we're doing those types of assessments is co-location of dependencies. So if you have a web application that's out in the cloud, it shouldn't be talking a lot back and forth over the VPN to infrastructure that's on-prem. So we came up with a solution for them where we have a small kind of lightweight API that sits on-prem still next to the data warehouse, does a lot of the number crunching and the chatty behavior that happens between the database and the Oracle and the code, and then produces that up into the cloud with a very kind of single API call and limits that traffic over the VPN wire. So really looking not only at how the code is from a static perspective, but we really do look at the experience and the logic of the code to understand where are the pieces that we'd have to use a scalpel and carve out and move and make them optimized. In addition to that kind of hybrid plan, they are looking more long-term at a longer-term plan to move the Oracle Data Warehouse into a cloud provider, and so that's ultimately, the multiple phases approach there for that solution. So those were three quick examples that I did want to show here. In order to get started with this program, I think one of the best ways is, if you could just email me, I can certainly get you in touch with the right people here at Tallan that can help out. In addition, you can reach out to your Microsoft reps. So Microsoft reps are all very familiar with this program. It's very heavily leveraged by Microsoft sellers as well as Microsoft partners here, which is us. There is a recording that we'll be able to send out at the end of this to help give you any additional information if you'd like to share this around. I also am personally willing to kind of get on the phone with any of you and give you a little bit more details about what the program is and what it might have to offer, and show you a little bit more about what we do. with that, I think we'll kind of be able to wrap up. I'll leave a little bit of time here for Q&A. So if anyone wants to, feel free to unmute and ask any questions. I'm happy to answer them and provide any additional details that anyone's interested in. All right, I know it was quick. If there are no questions, then I'm happy to, we will be sending out some follow-up email. I don't know, Gina, if you wanted to take over and kind of talk about some of the follow-up information, but.
Sure, Ben. So as Ben had mentioned, we will be sending the recording to everyone tomorrow. And then we also have a couple of follow-up emails that will include our one-pager and then a couple of client stories as well.
Great. All right. Well, with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for everyone taking time out of their lunch break to meet with us, and we look forward to hearing from you and happy to engage on any of these opportunities going forward.